Hello everybody! Today in this video for the Nicaragua channel, I'm going to be talking about relationships and young people. Because honestly, some of the best things you can do as a young person from the US or from Europe is to go spend time in a Latin American nation, especially if you are a person who is really lonely. I know this may seem ridiculous, but our generation actually has less sex, gets into less relationships, and is less likely to find a partner than previous generations. And especially in young white males in particular, for some reason, a lot of them stay single for a really, really long time. And there is a huge part of sort of US culture, really. I can't speak for the woman, but at least for the men, who fundamentally believe they are totally unattractive, nobody will ever want them because they are not rich, they don't have a car, all sorts of stuff like that. And what's very interesting is they're all wrong. Just seriously, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. If you're from the US or Europe, you're just in the wrong country. That's why you're struggling to find a relationship. All you have to do is just go to a country where you're exotic, and people will overlook your flaws. Personally, I have a friend who came to Nicaragua, got married, got a wife, basically making a family, but in the US, women hated him. He talked too much and would say offensive things. And my female friends in particular just wanted nothing to do with this individual, right? But then he comes here to Latin America and boom, wifed up like super fast. And it seems to actually be like a really good thing for him, to be honest. And it's quite interesting because in the US, he was really lonely and kind of suffering and only had male friends and all this kind of stuff. But then he comes to Latin America and some drama and that kind of thing, but boom, he's in a supportive relationship and seems really happy. So it's quite interesting how you can think that you will be alone forever as a young person or older person, whatever. Really, it's usually about you being in the wrong place. So of course, when you're in your own country, you've lived there your whole life, everyone around you looks like you, yeah, it's gonna be hard for you to find a relationship just because you're boring relative to everyone else. So you have to do more to stand out. Whereas if you just go to another country, suddenly the exact same you is exotic. You are dating material. Crazy, right? Like, take me for example. In the United States, I am in poverty. Like, literally, I earn less than $12,000 a year. I live off of like $800, $900 a month. I have a great life here in Nicaragua, but by US standards, that ain't nothing. Really, like there are some homeless people who beg and make more money than I do. Actually, most homeless people who beg make more money than I do, okay? So I'm sharing this with you because as far as dating goes, in the US, I don't have a car, I have long hair, I don't have a college degree, I'm never going to get a college degree. There's so many things going against me, and I often found I was constantly judged. I was broken up for not being Christian, for not being Islamic, for not being whatever, and I suffered a lot. But then I come to Latin America, and suddenly it's very, very easy to find a relationship. And you may say, oh yeah, but they're just using you for your money and crap. And look, as a dude, that is a reality of life. One of the things that draws women to you is your ability to provide for them. That is just reality. So to provide for a human in the United States, you need money. And so much money, you probably won't have any time to spend with her, which is so fucked. It really is. Right? But then you come here to Latin America, and like I said, poverty for me in the US, $12,000 or less dollars, right? I earn less than that. Homeless people earn more money than I do. Yet here in Nicaragua, I can provide for someone I love, work just 1 or 2 hours a day. I have multiple income streams and a beautiful life. I have a house that I don't own, but I'm able to rent a fully furnished house with a yard, I garden, I have 3 chickens, 6 birds that were my fiance's birds, and 3 cats. I'm surrounded by animals, and I get to spend my time doing what I love. So meanwhile, most of my peers in the United States get to their 30s, haven't fallen in love. Maybe they've fallen in love once if they're lucky. They're still living with their parents and struggling to find jobs. Yet I just fucked off, went to Nicaragua with poverty level income, and suddenly I have dignity with my life. I'm like a normal human. I have a relationship where I live with the person and I provide for things. I don't have all the money I need, but when something goes wrong, it's okay. I have a great quality of life. And any of you, especially if you're younger and you feel just like you really struggle to meet either man or woman or whatever it is that you're into, I'm making this video to strongly encourage you to just go visit Latin America. You don't even have to come to Nicaragua. I would love it if you visit Nicaragua. But honestly, it's very similar in a lot of other countries, like in Mexico, for example. And it's a lot easier for you to visit Mexico. The problem is, yes, there are people who will outright try and abuse you and fool you because they want to use you for your money, right? So there's a lot more of these kind of people in really touristy areas. So that's one of the reasons I kind of recommend you go check out Nicaragua, because it's really easy to access non-touristy areas. Whereas if you're going to Mexico, basically everything on the whole border that you can access is going to have a heavy tourist influence. Whereas here in Nicaragua, tourism is basically dead. So there aren't really that many people actively trying to manipulate foreigners and stuff, because there aren't enough people coming to Nicaragua to really supply that, right? But you can really work around it by just being in places like Managua, the city, the capital. You'll meet young people here or whatever. If you're also young, it's just easier to meet people when you're young. I'm not saying, look, I know most of you guys on my channel are actually a lot older than me. So this video is more geared to like people who don't normally watch my videos. And I realize like I'm by far the youngest person I've talked to who has come to Nicaragua. Usually the people who leave the US or Europe or whatever and come to visit Latin America, they're older. It's not something young people do. Everyone who books calls with me and talks to me or even just reaches out or sends messages, very, very few of them are young. So I just wanted to get that out there. I understand that I may be alienating a few of you by the way that I'm talking about young people, but I want to bring this up because where I'm from, it really is a huge problem. There are loads and loads and loads of single dudes who live with their parents, have had struggled to get into relationships, and they're desperately lonely. And what's so interesting about this is here in Nicaragua, it's easy to see. Like if you talk to a Nicaraguan mother and you're a lonely dude, they can just look in your eyes and they'll be like, you need a girlfriend. Like they can just see it. They see it in your face. They can tell that you have this look about you that you're suffering because you haven't been with people. You haven't experienced humanity in the way we're really meant to, which is to be in a loving relationship. And the unfortunate part is you're going to have to mess up a lot of relationships before you can secure a relationship and not screw it up with someone who's worth it. So if you're not even getting into relationships at all, you're really, really far behind. And the chances are that when someone comes along who's good for you, you'll probably get up because you don't have the basic experiences necessary to be in a relationship. Being in a relationship is not an easy thing. And the right person for you will come along and it's gonna be hard. There are times where you're gonna wanna quit, right? But the right person, when you put in effort into the relationship, that effort turns into something. And that's how you know. It's like, yeah, everything worth having in life is gonna be challenging, and especially with relationships. But a good relationship is one where when you put in effort, when you do go through that, it's rewarding, it's fulfilling. The other person returns the effort. They listen to you, they talk with you. You know, these things, they all matter. And we have an epidemic of single people in the US. Really, we do. We are really bad at forming relationships, and we are getting worse and worse and worse. And one of the reasons for this is because of technology. We have become so dependent on texting and messaging and dating apps that we are even further lost in our insecurities and our minds. We think, oh, I could never be attractive because I don't got those big abs. I'm not a muscly dude. I don't got no car and all this bullshit. But a lot of people here in Nicaragua, they just want someone who can help them live a better life. They really don't care. Like I said, I live under poverty conditions by US standards. Yet, by Nicaraguan standards, I'm moderately wealthy. I didn't do anything to deserve that. And you can take advantage of that too. You can, let me ask you, which would you rather live? A life in the US where you have to spend thousands of dollars on your rent, maybe less than 1,000 if you're a lucky duck, you get a room or something, and then you have to work. Maybe, if you're lucky, 20 hours is enough to cover your bills, but that's really unlikely. It's more likely that you're going to need to work between 40 and 50 hours. And also maybe commute. And also maybe you had to spend, $100,000, $150,000 to get a degree to even get that job in the first place. There's a lot of expenses, and the worst part is that while you're earning money, there's constantly people trying to make money off of you. They're like, oh, you need to be wearing deodorant and shampoo and conditioner and all these things that you need to buy, and we basically are a product of an addicted society where people just get manipulated into working all the time because they think that they have to. And then meanwhile, all these companies are just getting rich, like stabbing you, and they're like, hey, yeah, now you're going to be scrolling, and we're going to get money from that. And there's so much money in making money off of US citizens in particular. It's disgusting, and it's continuing. The marketing, marketing ruining everything, is getting worse and worse and worse and worse. It's not going away. These problems with forming basic connections and romantic relationships with other people, they are not going away. They are getting worse and worse and worse. People's mental health in the United States in particular is deteriorating. I left the US because of these circumstances 5 years ago. 5 years ago. I felt that as a young person, I was going to be effed. And that was before COVID. That was before inflation. That was before all this crazy shit's happening. And now, look at what's happening. In the past 2 years, the cost of most things in the US has gone up by 20%. That is insane. Think about that. Something that used to cost you $1,000 now costs you $1,200. You're not earning any more money, so guess what you gotta do? You gotta work more. And fuck that. What a miserable life is that, to just work all the time for people who don't care about you so that you can enrich the life of one rich dude who already has everything. Do you really want to be doing that? I mean, think about it. All of that, all the bullshit that I just talked to you about. Oh yeah, and if you break an arm or something happens to you, I hope you've been paying the $200 a month you need to pay for medical insurance, because if you haven't been doing that, well, pony over the $20,000 for your broken arm, because that's what you're going to need to do. In reality, you just ignore that shit, let the debt pile up. Welcome to the US, right? It's tragic, because here, my whole life, providing for a person I love and live with, myself, I spend $900 a month, guys. I rent. I live in the city. I live like 5 blocks away from the president. I live in a nice neighborhood. There's trees. It's relatively safe. I feel much safer here than I did in certain places I used to live in the US. When I first came to Nicaragua, people were like, you're going to get robbed and murdered, blah, 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 blah. And meanwhile, someone got shot and killed outside of a Dunkin' Donuts right where I lived. It's like, what, that kind of shit doesn't happen in the US? Like, really? You're gonna believe all this crap? It's just, the world is dangerous. There's danger all around us. Don't let that stop you from living a beautiful life. Because really, let me end this video with asking you something. Which life do you think is better? the life in the US, wasting all of your time making other people wealthy so that you can spend more time with your coworkers than your lover. And at the end of the day, what do you get out of it? Are you a landowner? Are you investing? What do you have from the past 10 years of work that you've done? Just, things to throw out there. I'm not saying the US is horrible. It's really great if you're an immigrant. Really awesome, seriously. If you're a first-generation immigrant, those are the most patriotic people in the world. But my point here is, which life, honestly, ask yourself, which life would you rather have? A life there in the US where you need so much money and resources, you cannot provide for another person. You are just a normal dude or girl or whatever. You don't stand out from the others. You've been hoping to find someone someday, but you're single, you've struggled to get into relationships, and you're probably just going to settle with someone who isn't really that good for you because you're so desperate for love that when it comes your way, you're just going to roll with it. So, which is better, that or living a life where you only need to work 2 or 3 hours a day? You could provide for someone if you want to, or not. You can go surfing. You can go visit beaches. You can go on vacations for less than your cost of living in the US. Literally, here in Nicaragua, it's cheaper to be out vacationing, spending money, than it is for me to just exist in the US. And I didn't live in an expensive place. I lived in Wheeling, West Virginia, right? It's a really cheap area. And it was still more expensive there than it is to be vacationing here in Nicaragua. So what are you doing? Like, why waste your precious life? You're gonna die. I'm gonna die. And at least here, I get to live a life with dignity. I get to live the way humans are supposed to live. We're supposed to be able to fall in love and take care of some land and, have some drama, but whatever, it's okay, and not really get too worried about stuff and not have to work for like 10 hours a day just so that we can afford a one tiny ass bedroom apartment in a ghetto area. Like, you gotta understand that by living in the US, you're making corporations rich at your expense. Most of us are just fodder. And you can let all of these corporations and all of these marketing gimmicks and all of this influence from education and crap, you can let that convince you that it's all worth it. But I know for me, it's not. Life is short, and you're gonna die, and it could be a lot sooner than you expect. So why on earth would I give 10 or 20 years of my life to some company in the vain hope that they may help me retire someday? That shit is gone. And for all these reasons, more young people need to visit Latin America, especially from the US. All right, and that was just me ranting about that. And if you like this kind of thing, or you want to learn more about Nicaragua, how you could visit here, how much it costs, my experiences here, I came here 5 years ago. I left for 9 months, basically 9 months in Nicaragua, 9 months back in the States, and then I was like, no, fuck this shit, I'm going back to Nicaragua, and I've been here ever since. And I'm not going to say I don't have problems. I'm not going to say, there's not things to get used to living here, but it's totally different. I come from a generation of people who struggle to take care of themselves, who struggle to form relationships. Many of us, by the time we're 30, we've never even fallen in love. It's a shit quality of life. I don't care how many couches you have. I don't care how nice your car or your job is. The quality of life in the US for most people is shit. If you have to spend more time with your coworkers than your children, you have a shit quality of life. And I understand that it sucks. You don't have a choice. That's what you've been told. You don't have a choice. You have to work. But that's only true because you live in one of the most expensive countries in the world. I get that you're used to it. but grapple with the reality that you, one individual in the US, consume as much resources financially as 2 or 3 families in a country like Nicaragua. I'm talking about you, an average poor individual. I'm not saying you're wealthy or anything. I'm saying just average people. In order to live in the US, you have to spend so much money that you could provide for 2 or 3 families for that same amount of money here in a country like Nicaragua. And really, it seems so dumb for me, personally, after seeing all the things that I've seen, seeing how people justify why the US is worth it. What on earth can be worth you spending more time with your coworkers than your children and your loved one? If you really think that your coworkers are more important to you than your kids, what are you doing? What kind of life is that? And I know that this is so, it just sucks, because so many people I know have problems because their parents had to work all the time and they weren't around for them. And most of my friends that have issues that they struggle with, it's because their parents didn't spend time with them. That's really what it boils down to. So not only are you living a life where you have to spend more time with your coworkers than the people you love, but the act of doing that creates a hard future for your children. You may tell yourself, oh, my kid gets to go to any college that they want. Yeah, sure, everyone's college educated now, and yeah, people struggle to find jobs. It's a hugely corrupt industry, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Why do you think people are trying to get rid of it, being burdened, all sorts of, no, just forget all that for a moment. Just think about it. Which is better for your kid? A mind unburdened because the kid got enough time with their parents to feel loved so that they have the foundation to form loving relationships? Or a fuckload of relationship problems, but they got a college degree. Yeah, they can get a job. I mean, maybe, that's great, It's just so fucked, guys. It really is. And I get this is just me babbling about stuff. I'm going to offend people with this video. But I really wanted to get it out there because more young people need, for their own mental health, to come visit Nicaragua and other Latin American countries. The irony is that US citizens can live a better quality of life by moving to Latin America, while Latin Americans can often live a better quality of life by moving to the US and getting a job. We live in a really weird world. I'm here, I told you my story, right? I definitely live a better life here than I would in the US. I was miserable. I did that shit. I had a full-time job, someone I lived with, blah, blah, whatever. It sucked. I was working all the time. I had to put everything second to work. When I was trying to make games or do shit like that, I had to deal with the fact that I'd come home and be exhausted because I worked for 10 hours, and then my passion comes second to that? Why? Alright, and if you're this far in the video, you're probably not that offended. And if you are, you're probably pretty open-minded. So I'm going to take this moment to ask you, please, for your own sake, visit Latin America. Visit Nicaragua. Hell, visit Mexico. Just expose yourself. Watch some YouTube videos about traveling or something. Because a lot of the things that you face, a lot of the problems that you face, if you're a young person, you can fix them just by exposing yourself to a different part of humanity. And me personally, I live a much better life here. I'm treated better. I'm not scared of the police in Nicaragua. US police are military. They stress you out. They try and, they might kill you, and they could kill you and it'd be okay. Here in Nicaragua, police are hesitant to shoot a person with a gun or a knife. The political events happened and 200-something people died in protests. But you should understand That many people get shot by police in the US every year. It's totally normal, and you can tell with the interactions with the police. And so I'm saying this because there's a lot of fear-mongering, there's a lot of propaganda, and there's people trying to prevent you from coming and visiting Latin America. Because the reality is, you've been fed a lot of lies. You've been created into this entity that needs to work all the time, and you think that's necessary, but it's not. All you're doing is making some rich asshole richer. Since my generation was born, the wealthy have become wealthier. The poor have become poorer. We're not progressing. Quality of life isn't really improving. The numbers are improving. It looks good on paper. That stock market, though, woo! But really, ask yourself, what matters? The stock market and wages and numbers are crap? Or the time you get to spend doing what you love while you're alive? The time you get to spend with someone you have feelings for? Which is more important, the numbers or the experience? So please, come visit Nicaragua. Seriously, you won't regret it. Maybe you'll learn and maybe you'll scoff and not like it, but honestly, even that experience alone is enough to get people appreciative of the things that we have, okay? So if you like this, I offer consultations. They are 30 minutes for $20, and you can find them by going to calendly.com/JackDermotPittman or clicking on the top link below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!